I am responsible for the deaths of several people. Around 4 years ago, I was a vendor on the dark net. It was a relatively short-lived thing. I was just doing it because I was too lazy to get a job, and at the time I didn't want to settle for the 9 to 5 thing. I wanted to start my own business and use the drug money as a startup. I had been using myself for years. Along with that, I met lots of people into the dealing scene and eventually started dealing myself. I have a lot of anxiety though, so I hated meeting up with people in parking lots, and I definitely didn't want anyone to know where I lived. That's when I read about the Silk Road. I got obsessed with the idea of it, got obsessed with learning OPSEC, all with the goal of eventually using my connections to start up my store. Well, after a couple of months, I did. I started my store with 3 drugs: ketamine, meth, and some outdoor weed my buddy was getting for super cheap. All was going good for a few months. I had a couple of thousand get stolen in an exit scam, but I had around $25,000 saved at that point, so it didn't ruin my life like a few vendors I knew of. Eventually, I met a local connect that came into town only once a week, but had fucking anything I wanted. Mescaline, LSD, mushrooms, PCP, and fentanyl. At the time, people weren't really cutting heroin with fentanyl. I mean, I'm sure people did plenty, but it was not nearly as commonplace as it is now. People just did fentanyl, and still do. I put all my addresses into an Excel spreadsheet, along with their name, zip code, order, along with the amount. At the time, I was selling some super white powdered mescaline. The fentanyl was also a white powder. Very similar consistency. Long story short, my Excel fucked up, or I fucked up, and about 7 people's mescaline orders were filled in as fentanyl orders. They all went out. I didn't notice, and kept doing my thing for a few days. After about 5 days, someone contacted me and told me that their friend died from my mescaline. I immediately called bullshit. I went to check my order log and scale up how much I had of my mescaline left. Well, I had about 11 grams more than I should have. I still don't know how the fuck it could have happened. I wasn't a user, but I was definitely high off dabs. I went to check my order log on the market to see if anyone had finalised on their purchase, and a couple of them were, but none of them from a specific day, including the person that messaged me. No one that had purchased mescaline that day had finalised their orders. The market I was on also had a feature to see the user's last activity, and none of them had logged in at least 3 days, most 2 days. I immediately deactivated my vendor account. I didn't even need confirmation. I knew what happened. I knew I just killed several people. I sold the rest of my drugs, converted my Bitcoin to cash, and moved the fuck away. I didn't speak to anyone for weeks. I found a job in a restaurant, living in a city I always wanted to, but I haven't touched drugs to that day. I haven't had anything to do with that life since then. I still think about them, every night. I saved their names and googled them a few days later. I was able to find info on 4 customers that definitely died. 1 customer shared it with a friend. They both died. I don't know why I'm even posting this, mainly because I have no one to tell. And even if I did, I don't think I could. I spend my days sober, clocking into work, clocking out of work, coming home, playing games. I'm a complete recluse. People I used to know have distanced themselves immensely, and I know it's because I'm a shell of my former self. I can't help it. Could I even tell a therapist about this? I don't feel like I deserve to be alive. Am I really living anyway? I don't even know anymore. Maybe this will help me feel better. I was kidnapped when I was 8 and held in captivity for 3 years. I was picked up by a stranger from school, posing to be my dad's friend, saying that he would drop me off to the airport to catch a flight with my dad. Not only did I actually have to travel with my dad that day, but this man somehow knew my dad was getting off early from work. He told me that morning. And that he had to go fishing with his friend. He did this a lot. He told me that my dad sent him to pick me up and meet him directly at the airport. I believed him. convinced my teachers that I knew him because I was excited to go to the airport, and I ended up leaving with him. I was held in captivity for 3 years. I was beaten, starved. 11-year-old me had learned to make him trust me. It started with us going around in his car, although I had to sit in the back seat and stay quiet the whole time. He let me come into his kitchen and make food for myself. He let me clean his house. The day we went to feed the ducks at the park, I ran. I ran as fast as my weak legs could carry me. Because of the crowd, I think he lost me. I begged the family for help, telling them I was kidnapped and I wanted to go home. I told them my name, my school's name, and my parents' names. Long story short, they caught him. He killed himself. I was back with my dad, my sisters, my dogs. I'm now happily married to my wife of 4 years, still undergoing therapy. Have a good job and a baby on the way. I realise it doesn't end well for most, and I got lucky. But the only way I kept going was telling myself I'm going to escape. And then, I'm going to get better. I'm going to love myself again. I'm going to get past my trauma. I used to pay my middle school bully not to bully me, then I found out he actually needed the money. He made my life a living hell. He would turn all the boys in class against me and bully me about my eyebrows. One time, he begged me to buy him pizza, and he said he promised not to bully me all week if I do. So, I bought him a box of pizza, and he fulfilled his promise. I loved the idea. I began to do it on a regular basis. I started asking him every Friday what he wants next week so that the bullying doesn't happen again. He asked for 2 bags of hot fries. This is a potato chip flavour here in the US. And another time he wanted some milk from the cafeteria. My school had a uniform dress code. It was $25 per shirt and the pants were $15. If I remember correctly, he showed up the first day of 8th grade in regular clothes, a t-shirt and jeans. So he got sent to the main office to wait for his parents. My aunt was there because she used to drop off my lunch and hand me my money to buy food after school. She saw him upset and asked what's wrong, and he starts crying lightly. His parents wouldn't come because they couldn't afford the uniform and decided it would be best to avoid the situation. After my aunt hands me my lunch, she buys him a uniform hoodie, a couple of t-shirts and a long sleeve. He said he had pants at home and he was hesitant to accept, but eventually took them and thanked her. Now, 13 years later, he runs a non-profit that has something to do with kids receiving books. I think it's sweet, and I forgive him for being a bully, because he didn't grow up to be an asshole like most. I fake an accent at my job. My heart is pounding writing this, because I literally haven't told anyone. So, I work at this one store, and I work on the sales floor. But before all that, I was just one person interviewing for a position at the store. Before I arrived for my interview, a friend of mine dared me to interview in a British accent. I said I'd only do it if they paid me, and to my surprise, they sent me $10 through Venmo, which was more than enough for me. I went into the interview with the mindset that I wasn't going to get hired, and they inevitably hired me on the spot, accent and all. I was nervous because I had already talked to a bunch of higher-ups with the accent and decided to just go with it, thinking it was only going to be a summer job. I was so wrong. It's been like 7 months that I've been working there, and I still use the accent to this day. When people ask me where I'm from, I just tell them my hometown, because I have several Brits from that town whom I grew up with. The accent hasn't really posed a problem, until now, because my boyfriend is friends with one of my co-workers, so I'm going to have to come clean. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Update. I finally told my boyfriend about the accent, and he said, and I quote, "Well babe, you just gotta fake it till you make it, and get the hell out of there."